Hi everyone, I'm Sam Valenti here with another edition of CTreySports One-on-One. I'm honored today to be joined by one of the most accomplished sports broadcasters really of all time, former sideline reporter for NBC's Sunday Night Football. I grew up watching you on my TV screen for so many years, and the current host of a podcast called Sideline Sanity, which is great, very intelligent, entertaining podcast. The one and only Michele Tafoya. Michele, how are you doing today?
I am well, Sam, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that my dog Jersey is going to behave and not bark here. But if he does, I guess that's what we call live broadcasting, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'm curious, how was your Thanksgiving?
You know, it was a lot like a lot of people's, filled with football and family. It was good. What did you do? Did you enjoy any of the games?
Yes, absolutely. As a Cowboys fan, I like seeing us win. So that was good.
Good for you. Good for you. I always enjoyed covering the Cowboys. I'm a huge Dak Prescott fan as a person, and so it's tough not to cheer for the guy.
Yes, absolutely. I love Dak as well. But gosh, you covered so many Thanksgiving games. And so what was it kind of like? Now you're not doing that. Are you kind of able to relax a bit more? It's not as stressful.
It's certainly not as stressful. It's funny. This is the first Thanksgiving that I haven't done a game in ages, right? And my old crew, my Sunday Night Football crew, where was their game this year on Thursday on Thanksgiving? It was in Minnesota, which is where I live. So it could have been a home game if I was still with the crew. But actually, it's funny. I think the part that was a little strange was watching everyone hand out these turkey legs after these games. That was such a big part of our night. It may not have been the most viewed part of our telecast, but it was a lot of preparation, a lot of fun, some memorable moments from those turkey leg and game ball handouts. And I think if there's one part of Thanksgiving that I missed, that was probably it.
Gosh, I know, right? So many iconic moments just from the post game. Do you have like a specific Thanksgiving game that really like sticks out for you in your mind?
Oh goodness. I do remember when Seattle beat San Francisco in San Francisco, and Richard Sherman got very excited about carrying the entire tray of turkey legs off of the field, all around the field. They enjoyed celebrating on San Francisco turf. And some people got mad at me because I reminded them of that too much. That's part of the job. You're going to talk about the storyline, and some people don't enjoy the storyline as much as the other side does. So, but that one really stands out to me. There have been some fun ones, though. I'll tell you, I just too many to enumerate. But it was such a great pleasure to interact with these players who had just given everything on the football field and were so excited not only to win on national television on Thanksgiving, but then to be part of that turkey leg moment, which has become iconic.
Yeah, and for you to be such an integral part of that, I can only imagine just how cool that was.
It was a lot of fun.
Yep. So many years. So let's go a bit back to the beginning here. Did you always want to become a sports journalist, or were there maybe other things that maybe you thought, throughout your childhood that you'd rather go into?
I think growing up a kid in Southern California, I wanted to go to Hollywood and be an actress. That's what I wanted to do. And I was big into theater as a kid, all the way through college, really. But I became a little bit more realistic about it. I did some auditions in LA. I did some voiceovers and things like that. But I realized I wasn't really cut out for that altogether for many reasons. And so I think the practical side of me took over, and I went back to business school, got a master's in business. And during that time, realized still I didn't want a 9 to 5. I didn't want that kind of life. I was too into adventure and sort of being out and about. And the entertainment industry still really drew me. And about that time, I started to see more women, not a lot, but a few popping up in sportscasting. And I was a massive sports fan. And I thought, why don't I marry those two things and try this out? I don't know that I ever imagined I would end up on Sunday Night Football or covering the Olympic Games. Those were certainly big dreams, but it's a testament to, I seriously, just really, really hard focused work, leaving a lot of things by the wayside while I worked, being willing to travel, move around, give up my social life, and things that I knew had to be done in order to find that happy place that I wanted in my career. And I'm so grateful that I got to have it. And I'm grateful that I got to leave on my own terms.
Did you have any like inspirations in sportscasting when you were younger?
I think Robin Roberts was certainly one of them. I grew up watching Leslie Visser, and I shouldn't really say I grew up watching her, but it's kind of like what people say to me. It's that face that you become familiar with as you're watching games, before you go to college, and all those years that you're watching games. And Leslie Visser was a pioneer for sure. Gail Gardner was a pioneer. There were a few of them, and so. But I loved Robin Roberts and the joy that she exuded when she delivered sports. This was before she was on Good Morning America. For some of you that may be too young to know this, she was on ESPN for many years and was just incredibly popular, which she remains. But she just had this joyful exuberance about her when she covered things, and I found that really cool. And it also, she was an example of it didn't matter if you were male or female, as long as you knew your stuff, then you were good to go. And that sort of gave me the courage to say, as long as I'm prepared and I know my stuff, maybe I can get in here and compete a little bit. And that was always my mantra, was doesn't matter what you look like, who you are, where you're from, any of that. Those are immutable characteristics that you have no control over. So the thing you do have control over is how hard you work and what you set your mind to. And so that's what drove me.
Yeah, that's such an important thing in the broadcast and journalism business is putting in that hard work and getting involved in stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there were times where I was working in radio and maybe no one else wanted to go cover a press conference or go cover these minuscule little detailed things that needed to be covered. And I just kept raising my hand. I just kept raising my hand. I'll go. What time is it? I'll go. Ends at midnight? I'll go. Have to be up at 5? I'll go. And I just kept working and proving that I was capable again and again and again. And then just stacking those experiences one on top of the other, which helped me practice. It's like any other practice that you go into. The more repetitions you get, the better you become.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you were that you were kind of a theater kid,
Yeah.
So in high school, I saw that you were involved in like some theater production stuff,
Yes.
which and I was formerly in a theater as well. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's super awesome. So. What are your favorite memories from being in theater, and in what ways did performing in those shows, being involved in them, working with a bunch of other people, how did working there kind of translate to the broadcast world?
I think translated big time. First of all, it's memorizing scripts, right? That's one of the key things you've got to do as a performer. You've got lines, you've got to memorize them. You can't screw that up. That's very true. Whenever you see someone do their opening on camera at an NFL game, they've memorized those lines. Now, in many cases, you're on the fly. You're not memorizing lines. You're just delivering news as it is coming to you. So that's a totally different skill set. But I think being able to stand up in front of people and perform is a huge part of the job, and being comfortable doing that. And I've just always been comfortable in front of an audience. I loved acting. I loved it. It just allowed me to discover other characters and to try on different voices and try on different attitudes. And it was a lot of fun. And I just love that kind of that performance part of the whole bit. So you rein that in a little bit as a journalist, because you're not acting, you are delivering important facts and hopefully entertaining stuff. But I think there's a lot of just being able to look down the throat of a camera and deliver and not worry about the distractions around you. And yes, and then you get to appreciate everybody, every stagehand, every lighting person, everyone that helps you have success on that stage. Well, it's the same thing on Sunday Night Football. We had hundreds of people on this crew, and it still does. And I appreciated every single one of them, because we put out such a spectacular product, and it's not possible without every single one of them. So I was happy and filled with joy to work with every one of them. And I hope they all sensed that, because I love that behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Definitely. Do you remember like any specific shows that you performed in, like any of and like specific names or anything?
Oh yeah, I did hair in college. I was a chorus member. I just sang a lot, and I did Blithe Spirit, which is a Noel Coward play. That was my first one in high school. I was a freshman. I got the leading role. That was exciting. I played Aunt Eller in Oklahoma, another musical that was a lot of fun. A good character to play. Oh, there were many, many, but those are the few that jump right out. Grease. I was in Grease, also in the chorus. That was a ton of fun as well.
Have you like ever thought of has the acting bug ever come back to you at any point to be like, oh, I want to get back into a show or anything? Have you ever has that
You
ever come
know,
back?
it's so time consuming, and it would really, it's difficult with kids and with a dog now to have the time to take that away to do. I think what I would really enjoy doing is narrating books on tape, or Audible, whatever you want to call it. For me, that's enjoyable too, to give voice to a bunch of different characters. You're just one person reading, and you've got to sort of distinguish each character by a tone or a pace or whatever it is. I think that would be really fun and something that I could manage to do. For now, though, I've got Sideline Sanity, my podcast, which it allows me to really engage in some interesting conversations with people. But I think once an actor, you're always a bit of a performer on some level, don't you?
You're right, right. Yep. And I can relate to that. So yeah, I'm totally with you there. Let's talk a bit about your college days. You went to UC Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
you majored in mass communications. So, what was the communications program like there at Berkeley? Are there any, and were there any specific classes or professors that you still remember from those days?
It's really interesting. I can picture a couple of professors that were really engaging. Journalism was a graduate degree, so I could only take certain journalism classes as an undergrad. But mass communications as a whole was a little bit different. You did learn the journalism aspect, but you also learned the impact of the media, which at that time, there was no social media. It was simply the networks, and then slowly but surely the cable networks. Advertising was a big part of that, and I later did an internship for an ad agency while I was in graduate school, which I found fascinating. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think more than anything, just gave me sort of a big picture of what the media means, particularly here in America. And now it's changed so dramatically over the years. So it's really different. I enjoyed my 4 years at Cal. Um, you may or may not know this. I ultimately sent my diploma back to the university because I was so disenchanted with some of their policies on allowing or disallowing different kinds of speakers. And there was kind of a riot there on campus where they had the university police stand down, and there was millions of dollars worth of damage done to the university and also to some people. And I was really disenchanted by my alma mater at that time. So I wrote a respectful but very curt letter and included it along with my degree. And I said, I can't keep this any longer. I disagree with the policies there. I'm a free speech absolutist, that you got to let people talk and debate and argue and find truth. And when you start, quieting voices, that is a very slippery slope and a very dangerous one. And I find that we're on that slope here in America, and it's got to stop. And so that was my statement to the university. They wrote me back via email saying this must have been a hard decision for you. And honestly, it really wasn't. My career was in good shape. I didn't need to say, gee, I graduated from Berkeley. I didn't need any of that. It was an important statement for me to make that you cannot stop people from speaking. You cannot cave into these mobs of people who simply because they disagree with an idea want to stop that person from speaking. The best way to disagree with an idea is to debate the idea and have a back and forth civil conversation and let the best argument win, not to stifle conversation or speech. That to me is a very scary thing. And that's been a part of why I've made the career changes that I have and devoted myself toward allowing people to speak. I think it's critically important.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you there, and I think that's something that you do really well on your podcast. You bring on people from various walks of life. You're talking about a variety of issues, variety of topics, and I think you do that really well. Just
Thank you, Sam.
engaging and stuff.
Thank you.
What was the campus culture like in Berkeley, kind of back in those days, and just how do you think, I guess, you just if it has how do you think it's, I guess, evolved from when you were there?
Well, I haven't been on campus for quite a while. I did go back for a game, but it's been a long time. You know, that campus has been a hotspot forever. My parents went there, graduated in the late 50s. My older sister went there just years before I did. We all know Berkeley in the 60s was quite a spot, and it was all about free speech. That was considered one of the birthplaces of the free speech movement in America. Even though free speech was granted by the Constitution 250 years ago, we seem to be still fighting for it all of the time. So UC Berkeley was a place where they promoted it, and I don't know what happened. I think it's like many institutions, it's gotten very, very, I don't even want to use the word liberal anymore, because classical liberalism is fine. It's gone so far left that, again, this notion of not allowing speakers on campus, someone as decorated as Condoleezza Rice was prohibited from going here at the University of Minnesota and speaking. That to me is insane. And that's why I have sideline sanity, because I feel like we're insane in insane times right now when we are not allowing respected, educated, experienced people to speak because you're mad at them for something, for one of the, listen, if you don't want to listen to them, just don't go listen. So Berkeley, I think, has just become a little more radical in that way. I hope that it will pull back. I don't know what to expect. I really don't, but I've seen this on the college landscape in general. So, you know, back then it was a very politically active place. There was a massive anti-apartheid movement at that time, asking the UC regents to divest all of their money from South Africa, where there was apartheid going on. I thought that was wonderful. I was all about that. I was for that and in favor of that. But I think that just, again, college campuses have become, they are supposed to be places where we seek truth, not where we say, it's my way or the highway. This is the truth. There is no argument with it. Science is settled. Science is never settled. I mean, it is, but we're evolving around the science. And so this is the part that I had a hard time with. But I think it's in a lot more places than Berkeley, to be fair.
Yeah. I would definitely have to agree with you there. It's just, it's really just a crazy, very divisive world we're living in right now. And it would be nice if somehow in the future we can actually come together, you know, and actually, you know, try to just have these discussions with each other, but in a civilized manner, not just, you know, screaming and yelling all the time.
I'm with you there, Sam. I hope so too. Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. Fingers crossed. So actually something I found that was really cool was in the beginning of your career, you did a lot of work in radio, which is really cool. So would you mind just kind of talking about just kind of those years? Because obviously I think everyone knows you from TV, but, you know, I'm not sure if many people know about you necessarily on the radio side of things.
I love the medium of radio. I really started in radio. I interned in radio in college. I worked for a huge radio station in Los Angeles while I was in grad school. I love the medium. It's theater of the mind in a way, because you're just listening to voices and you're either kind of having the conversation along with them in your head. I love it. And podcasting is very similar. You don't have to take as many breaks in a podcast as you do on a typical radio station, but I loved it. I worked in it, like I said, all through grad school. And then again, here in the Minneapolis area, I took my first job here was in sports talk radio. And just the ability to talk for more than 20 seconds at a time, the ability to have a conversation, to dig deep into a topic and really get into the nuts and bolts and talk with other people and to have it be conversational is really a lot of fun. So I think it really taught me a lot. Not to say that's one thing I shouldn't ever do, but we all fall into that now and then. My brother always criticizes me when I say but it does train you in a way that nothing else can, to be sort of on the spot, ready to move in any direction, whether you're covering breaking news. I think it really prepared me well for covering breaking news, because you are sitting in a studio, you've got people talking to you from different places. Here's what's going on. And you've got to keep delivering it without missing a beat. So it just, to me, it's a lot of fun. I think there's a reason radio and podcasts continue to survive, whether it's on satellite radio or streaming, whatever it is. People love to just have these kind of conversations, even if you're not talking and you're just listening to it with you whenever you're out on a walk or cleaning your house or in the car. And it's just a wonderful medium.
Yeah, and I still listen to a lot of sports talk radio, especially where I'm from in Dallas. We have a huge presence in sports radio, which is like The Ticket and The Fan. Yeah. And I love that stuff. Yeah. I just wish that maybe more people from this generation would I guess appreciate radio a bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting because this generation, I think, is so addicted to TikTok and or just listening to music on Spotify. One of the things that drives me crazy with my own kids, we'll be in the car and they'll say, "Can I play my music?" Yeah. And they start a song and they get bored midway through and change the song. And I'm like, why aren't we listening to the whole song? I just want to move on. It's like the attention span of my 14 and 17-year-olds is leaving a little to be desired. It kind of concerns me seriously, but it is the world we're living in. And I think these little tiny snippets are leading to a lot of just this almost attention deficit disorder. I sports talk radio is one of the most fun things because it's playful. You've got people who love to hate certain teams. They love to love other teams. And you certainly know with your affinity for the Cowboys, they are a love-hate relationship with so many fans in America. And so there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of playfulness. And I think no one gets hurt in the process more often than not. So it's, we're not talking about politics. We're not, in most cases, we're not talking about life and death situations. We're talking about why they didn't go for it on 4th and 1, when they were deep into all those kinds of things. Why so-and-so why didn't Tom Brady call that timeout last night? It's all of those kinds of fun things that we get to express together. And I really think it brings people to the table in a fun way.
Yes, I would definitely agree. I really agree with you when you were talking about just it's just crazy how I think as we're moving just further along, I feel like people's attention spans are just decreasing. It's crazy, and it's just like how TikTok is just such a big thing. It's just like these just like little 5-second things, just like it needs to move on to the next thing. It's crazy.
And you just see kids with their heads down, staring at their phones and swiping and swiping and swiping. And not to get too in the weeds on it, but look, I've talked to people on my podcast who know the facts about TikTok and that it is owned by a Chinese company that is intertwined with the Chinese Communist Party. And they are not our friends. And they would love to see us become just this dopey society over here in America and lose our standing as the greatest democracy the world has ever known. They'd love to replace us whenever, and they're playing the long game. And I know certain countries have banned TikTok, and I think the United States should as well. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I think I'm like one of the few people in my generation who doesn't have TikTok.
Good for you. Good for you, Sam.
I'm happy to say that I don't have it.
Good. You should be proud of it too, because you're You're going to have more productive hours in your day.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a bit about your time at CBS. Something that really cool happened that during your time at CBS. You became the first woman to do TV play-by-play for the NCAA men's basketball tournament in '96. It's a crazy story how it happened. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, it's pretty amazing. Would you mind sharing it for those who might not know about it?
Yeah, because it's a long time ago now, but it really wasn't by choice. I was the sideline reporter, and it's funny. It was here in Minneapolis at the Target Center. No, was it at Target Center or was it in the Dome? It might have been in the Metrodome, which a lot of times domes are used for the tournaments. Regardless, Sean McDonough and Bill Raftery were the announcers. I was the sideline reporter. And at a certain point, right before halftime of I want to say it was Kentucky Wake Forest game. Yeah, because Tim Duncan was on the floor. It was Kentucky Wake Forest. I heard in my ear, Michele Tafoya, get down to the broadcast table now. And I thought I was being pranked. And my producer, it was Bob Monsbach, and I said, Bob, are you joking? Get down there now, Michele. So I go down there, and it turns out that Sean McDonough is ill. He has some sort of a stomach issue. He runs off. I sit down. I've never done play-by-play in my life. I have no idea what I'm doing. There's a board in front of me. A board is what a play-by-play announcer uses to identify players, have all their stats, their personality traits, everything. And there's a statistician sitting to my side, and he's trying to point numbers to me. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. I'd never been exposed to this. I was not prepared. It's a completely different job to prepare for. And I was nervous, but I didn't have time to be nervous. And they kind of came back. We came back to the game out of commercial break and on camera. And Bill Raftery says, you may notice that my play-by-play announcer is a lot better looking than the one who left. Michele is here to sit in for a minute, Sean, and so there was that element of Bill Raftery trying to make me comfortable and using his inimitable sense of humor to bring me into the fray. And a lot of women went through the roof. How could he point out about your looks and not just take you seriously? It's like, that's Bill. That's what he does. It was fine with me. I wasn't offended, and nobody else should be either. Anyway, we got through it. I really, all I remember is just this blur. And then Sean McDonough eventually came back, and they had him wait until halftime was over. We come back from halftime. Sean's back in his seat. I'm kind of sitting between them, and we explained to the audience what has happened. And that's kind of how it happened. There were so many stories told about it that were wrong. One of them being Michele didn't want to give up the play-by-play seat once she was in it. I was dying to give it up. It was just that I was being told, we're going to wait until halftime is over. Let's make this as seamless as we can. So even though Sean was back and waiting there, I was just sort of like, what am I doing? Tell me what to do. So it was quite a blur. It was quite a moment. I didn't do anything spectacular. I didn't break anything, but we all survived it. And later on in my life, I was able to do play-by-play with tons more preparation and a mindset of how to do it.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story, and I think it's very impressive that you were able to go in there just on a moment's notice and actually do that. That's on such a big stage too. That's really impressive.
It was crazy.
Yeah, and I think you just going off that, something that again I don't think a lot of people really know about you is that you've done quite a bit of play-by-play. And I believe you did play-by-play for the WNBA on Lifetime as well, like for some other sports too.
Yeah, a lot of men's basketball too. A lot of men's basketball, a lot of women's basketball, NCAA. As you mentioned, the WNBA. I worked with Reggie Miller and a gal named Megan Pattison, and then later Doris Burke, who of course has found her own way into the NBA. So yeah, a lot of college basketball. When I was working for ESPN, there were so many college games on the slate that I was able to do some of those. Yeah, I actually fell in love with it. It's a lot like radio in that you are describing for people, although it's on television. So you have to find this balance between not overdoing it and describing every move you're seeing, but not underdoing it. And it was a real challenge. And I admire every play-by-play guy and gal out there, because there's a lot that goes into it, tons of preparation, the ability to think on your feet, the ability to tell the story as it goes along. And I would sure love a chance to do it again, I think, if someone offered me that chance. But in the meantime, I'm really grateful, and I got to meet so many amazing people and work with so many great people.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your prep like for like when you were doing play by play? What was your prep like?
Well, I started with creating my board. So every player on team A, every player on team B, every coach and assistant. And I had, you're memorizing jersey numbers, you're memorizing where they played college ball, you're memorizing their stats. You've got all this information packed onto these boards. And that was a huge part of the preparation, and being able to weave those facts in as the game went on. Of course, you meet with the teams and the coaches before the games. You try to get a sense of what the coaches are trying to accomplish, what their approach is, what their philosophy is, what players' personalities are like, so you can bring that through to the audience when you're telling the stories, and that you have some interesting anecdotes about these players that maybe weren't out there. That's one thing you're trying to do, whether you're a sideline reporter or an analyst or a play-by-play announcer. You're trying to tell interesting stories that bring people into the game, that make them care. And so that was a big part of the preparation as well, trying to make people care about these individuals out there and understand what it took to get them out there. So that was a lot of research, a lot of preparation, and then just taking a deep breath before you went on the air and trying to do a good job without overpowering the game. You want to let it breathe too. And there's no one better at letting a broadcast breathe than Al Michaels. He is the king of play-by-play in my estimation.
Yep, I am right with you there. And funnily enough, Al Michaels actually attended the school that I'm at right now.
Yes, he did.
So yeah, it's pretty cool to say that I go to school where Al Michaels went to school. So
he's very proud of that.
Yep, absolutely. A proud Sun Devil. So now let's get your time with ABC and ESPN. You were able to work your first Super Bowl as a sideline reporter. Now with those networks, Super Bowl 40, the Steelers and Seahawks, one of the more controversial big games, I think as everyone knows. But what was your mindset going into that game? You're going to be on the sidelines. You're working with Susie Colbert, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
So were you excited, nervous? Like what was going through your head?
Everything. I had begun working for Monday Night Football by that time, so I was with this amazing crew of Fred Godelli, our producer. He's a Hall of Famer. Drew Esikoff, he's going into the Broadcast Hall of Fame in a matter of days. Al Michaels and John Madden, and it was amazing. And sorry about the dog. But it was nerve-wracking. I had the Steelers, Susie had the Seahawks, and it was exciting and nerve-wracking, and it was a dream come true. That's funny when you get into it and you're getting as deep into it as I was at that time. The thing you want to do is cover the biggest moments, the Olympic Games, the Super Bowls, the NCAA championships, college football championships, all those things, the NBA finals, which I got to cover as well while I was at ABC. And so it's big, but at the same time, you have to stay calm enough. And for me, it was always about the audience of my producer. If my producer was happy with my work, then I was happy with my work. He and continues to be the standard bearer. He holds everyone to an extremely high standard. And so I always felt like if I could live up to his expectations, then I was doing my job. So whenever I looked into that camera during a game, I was thinking, would Fred Godelli approve of what I'm delivering right now? So it was phenomenal. It was a great opportunity, and I'm glad it wasn't the only Super Bowl I got to do.
Yeah, it sure was not. Yeah, because you were able to work quite a few more big games. Because that was the first, would you say that's the most memorable Super Bowl you covered, or would you say another one?
No, I think the most memorable was Seattle, New England, when Pete Carroll decided at the goal line not to hand off to Marshawn Lynch, but to throw it, and Malcolm Butler picked it off, and it sealed the deal for New England. That to me was a singular moment I'll never forget. And I was standing behind Bill Belichick when it happened. And when the unknown Malcolm Butler, at the time, no one knew who this kid was, made the interception, Belichick's arms went into the air. And and then my job was to stalk Malcolm Butler until the end of the game and make sure we did a post-game interview with him. And so I had him at the end of the game, and I'm holding him and I'm waiting. Come on, Al, throw it to me. And finally, Al throws it to me. But at that moment that Al threw it to me to do the interview, Malcolm decided he had waited long enough and he started to run away. So I had to chase him down and grab him again and ask him my questions. And I still haven't ever watched that moment. People told me it was hilarious because I'm running, and they stayed with me. I'm glad they stayed with me. The announce team stayed with me. They let me get to him and play it out. But that to me was probably the most, and then I got to cover Philly beating New England with the Philly special. So that one was great as well. It's just been, I just had so many fun, exciting moments.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I, in my opinion, I think that's the best Super Bowl ever. Just in my personal opinion,
It was a good one.
something I'll always remember is when they're showing the replays and just Brady jumping up and down. That's what I always remember.
Yep.
But yeah, and just one of the greatest NFL games in general.
Yeah.
Ever. But yeah, and that was, of course, during your long tenure with NBC. You had such an amazing run working at Sunday Night Football. Getting to be such a big part of a program that was pretty much the most watched program, weekly on U.S. television, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking back at just that whole run, what does it mean to you?
It's really meaningful. I'm so proud to have been associated with it. I feel like I was a small part of it. I really do. I mean, Al and Chris, and the games were tremendous. We were gifted these amazing schedules by the NFL. But yes, it was the number one show in primetime for 11 straight years. That's remarkable to be a part of. So I was always proud of that association. I feel extraordinarily lucky to have not only worked with John Madden at the beginning of my career, but then Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels all the way through. And to me, there is nobody better at presenting a live event than Al Michaels. Certainly when it comes to baseball, football, the NBA, I always felt like Al just struck the right tone every single time. And so to now have those people as my second family, as my close friends, and to know how hard we all work together, it's really gratifying. It really is. But I still do feel like I was a small part of the whole picture, though behind the scenes, we were as tight a family as you could be. We loved each other, respected each other, worked hard together, went through a lot of ups and downs together. And so I'm just so grateful for that time with them. But like I said, I was grateful also to leave on my own terms. I had wanted to leave back in 2018. I told them that 2019 would be my final season. They asked me to stay on for another Super Bowl and get through the COVID season. And I felt they had given me so much. I wanted to give them what they needed and desired. And so I stayed on those extra couple of years. So when I finally left after this last Super Bowl, the Rams beating Cincinnati in LA, I really took a good look at the field as I was leaving, because I knew I would never, ever have that experience again of the privilege and the honor and the benefit of being on a field with all these accomplished players and coaches and watching it from that vantage point and being able to talk to these people in these moments of competition and, post-game interviews and things like that. So that was a really emotional moment for me, knowing it was all over, but it was emotional also because I felt like I had been so lucky.
Yes, absolutely. You just brought up, that being your last game, and something I'll always remember from that last game is watching your post game interview with Aaron Donald. I think such a phenomenal job of really capturing, his emotions, now after finally getting that ring that he had wanted, his whole life. I think you did a fantastic job with that, with that
Thank
really
you.
being kind of your last big moment, on the, and being in the Super Bowl too. Like, how big is that? You can say your last appearance on Sunday Night Football was the Super Bowl. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty amazing way to go out.
It was in Los Angeles, my kind of hometown, where I was born in Southern California. And so there was a lot of that. It's funny. Going into it, I wasn't really thinking about this being my last game. Doing the game, I wasn't thinking about it that way. Doing that post-game interview, the important thing as a journalist, and especially when you're interviewing a player who has just experienced the pinnacle, is to leave yourself out of it and really try to get them to give you as much personal experience of this as they can. And so you really do have to take yourself out of the equation. It's a great honor to be able to do those interviews and share those moments with the country and the world and with that player. And I've always been a huge Aaron Donald fan. So that was incredible. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about him and how, I need to get to this answer or this kind of sense from him. And you only have so much time to do that. So it's really a challenge. And I know people want perfection in those moments, and we try to deliver that. But once it was all over and we were off the air, I almost just walked out of the building like I always did every Sunday night previous, going, okay, let's go back to the hotel and have a glass of wine and talk about it. I was ready to do that. And I kind of went, wait a minute, stop. Look around, take this in. This is it. You're not going to do this again. Take this in. And then the waterworks came and I just started crying, and I didn't want anyone to see me crying, but it was kind of impossible. And so I remember Andrew Whitworth, the left tackle, Walter Payton Man of the Year, saw this happening apparently, because he came running over to me and gave me this massive hug, and it was amazing.
Oh, wow! That's just wonderful, and I think I think that moment right there that you just talked about, I think it really speaks volumes about how even respected you were by the players themselves. I think that's and I think that's really special for you, obviously, as as a reporter, to have that respect from the players.
It is something you must earn, and you earn it day after day after day. You do not earn it in your first season, not even in your second or third. You earn it in season 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever it ends up being. You earn it by letting them trust you, knowing they can tell you things off the record that you will never say, learning that you will treat them with respect, learning that you will only report honestly and accurately, and that it's not about the reporter, it's about the story. And so I always put that front and center. I respect these human beings like crazy, because they do an amazing amount of work and preparation to do what they do. And they're human beings. And we like to look at them as these heroes or these supermen or whatever. I've been around enough of them for enough time to know that they are human like the rest of us, and they have some superpowers. Aaron Rodgers has some super quarterback powers. Tom Brady certainly does too. Peyton Manning, I could go on and on. But they are, in their essence, they're humans. They have the right to privacy about certain things. You just want to be very, very respectful. And so I always was, and I think that maybe that's why I got paid back in return.
Yep, and you had an incredible just run. You just truly, it's truly remarkable. Just all the things that you accomplished in your career, and also just within your run with NBC. And while you were at NBC, because you were just so great, you had the honor of being impersonated on Saturday Night Live by Cecily Strong. I noticed that's your header photo on Twitter, which I think is so funny. What was your reaction when you first saw that?
Oh my gosh. When we first heard that we were being, caricatured this particular night, we all went to the bar to watch. Chris, Al, and I went, and we just laughed. But I was so nervous. I was thinking, oh no, they're gonna make, what are they gonna do to me? But everyone's like, don't be nervous. You've made it. When you get to Saturday Night Live, you've made it, but I thought, yeah, but that could go one of two ways. That could go really bad, or it could be funny. Ultimately, again, I thought she played it what was amazing is she had the exact clothes that I had on that week. And I was like, how did she do that? It was funny. I thought the coach was hysterical. I thought this whole idea of this guy being so injured that his legs were basically on backward, it was funny. And the only thing I wish is that they had spelled my name correctly. They put 2 L's in the graphic on my name. So I was like, ugh. And, but other than that, it was one of those little funny points of pride for all of us. We got a real kick out of it.
Yep. Yeah. Once you get parodied on SNL, I mean, I think that's when you know that you've made it.
Well, it was fun.
Yep. Absolutely. But it's funny how you mentioned the graphic, because I was just rewatching it the other day, because it's one of my favorite sketches, and that was like the first time that I realized, oh my gosh, they got the name wrong.
I know, and it's my own network. It's NBC. It's like, come on, people. It's a common mistake, but I'll tell you, it just does not look like my name. It just looks like somebody else's name. And it's not a thing about being vain or anything. It's like if your name's Mark and they spell it with a C instead of a K, or like Chris Collinsworth doesn't have an H in his name. It's CRIS. It's just certain things like that. So yeah, I was kind of like, but whatever. What do they say? Any publicity is good publicity. I'm not sure I agree with that, but in this case, it was fine.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to talk about the Olympics, because you got to cover just quite a few Olympic games,
yeah.
and I'm sure that just involved just so much travel. You're getting to just experience, all these different cultures, different nations. What is there, like, one Olympic Games you covered that you would say was your favorite, and you just favorite, I guess, in terms of the culture, in terms of getting to explore just around the country and everything?
It would have to be Sydney in 2000, and I was a freelancer with NBC, and I was doing play-by-play on women's softball. And then I got roped into doing some rhythmic gymnastics, which I knew nothing about. So I just and then I even did some table tennis in the recording studio. So but I loved Sydney, and my husband went with me to that game, or to those games. We were, just newly together. And so we experienced it together, and we often told people we almost didn't come back. We loved Sydney and Australia that much. And if someday we turn up both missing, we're probably in Australia. It was tremendous. But I also loved London. They did such a good job. I love Tokyo is the most recent. That was the COVID games. That was fascinating and interesting because of that, and kind of sad. I loved Rio because I got to take my kids. I took my kids to London too, but they're too young to remember. But Rio they got to see, and that was a lot of fun, a lot of exploring. So my first one was Nagano in '98 Winter Games, and I was a host of the late night show. So they all had something special about them. And in Rio, I will also say it was Michael Phelps' final Olympic Games, and the United States swimming team did so many remarkable and surprising things that it was a joy to be there. It was so much fun. So I just an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah. I like getting to cover just all those Olympics. I can just imagine just how fun it was. It's funny that they mentioned Sydney. I've been dying to go to visit Australia one day.
Put it on your bucket list. You won't regret it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get there. How was the food there?
Awesome! I love sushi, and they have the freshest fish and sushi. It was tremendous. It was great. Everything was just superb. It was. Some of us were saying, they should have the Olympics in Sydney every year. It was so well organized and orchestrated, and there were no dictators in Australia. It's a good idea when you work with countries that don't have dictators. I think that's a good thing.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. Let's talk about what you're up to now. You're doing just so much now. It's a lot of cool stuff. Of course, we've talked about it a little bit. You have your podcast, Sideline Sanity. And like I said earlier, just these great engaging conversations with just so many different people.
Yeah.
It's just really great stuff. What's been your favorite part about doing this podcast and just by doing it, what sort of things have you been learning along the way?
Oh, I've learned so much. I think most importantly, this is like having my own business. It's like having a startup, and you've got to be able to deliver a product that your advertiser is proud of, that your sponsors are proud of, and grow an audience. And that takes time. And initially, I had some big names. I had Bob Costas and Tony Dungy on. And so initially the numbers were kind of way out of whack and very high, and it's sort of come back down to earth. So you have to work on building that yourself. So that's the main thing. But I think what was important to me about doing this in the first place was being able to speak freely about whatever the heck I wanted to. And that was one of the reasons I needed to leave network television in the sense of covering Sunday Night Football, because Sunday Night Football is NBC's crown jewel. And what they don't want to draw is controversy to that show. And so if I went on a bunch of podcasts like this and a quote got out of me saying something political, that would not be a good thing for Sunday Night Football. And I knew that. And that's what I signed up for. And that's what I agreed to. And I respected that. So in a lot of ways, I had to keep some of my opinions to myself, just not out there. So now I can say whatever I want to say. And I think there are some topics that really deserve to be delved into that aren't by most media or different channels. And this is a very, as you know, as you're doing, it's a very huge opportunity to do that and to get into the weeds in some of these topics and to cover a wide breadth of stuff. So it's been really interesting. It's challenging me to ask my best questions as an interviewer, to really listen to the person I'm interviewing, to have a free-flowing conversation that requires that you listen so you don't miss a great follow-up opportunity, and to just dip my toes into some issues that are really important to me away from sports. There's a lot, as I've kind of intimated in this conversation. And so I think we're at a very big moment in this country and really in the world, but specifically in this country, where free speech is a cornerstone of what we are as a nation. And it's being tread upon in a way that it shouldn't. And I think people who are afraid of engaging in debate, who won't debate their arguments, but will just spew them out there but won't respond to people who counter them, I think that's a really dangerous and ignorant place to be. And so I want to continue to just open up doors for people to be able to talk.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you do just so well with this podcast, is that you're bringing on a bunch of different people, and you're talking about a variety of different things.
Yeah, everything from religion to politics to China to vaccine mandates to free speech to whatever. It's and occasionally a little bit of sports too, and comedy, and it's been just a lot of fun. But the thing I want to, sorry about the dog. He's very vocal. He comes by it honestly. I think it's just encouraging people to listen to other points of view, and to not be afraid to have their own point of view, even if it goes against the mainstream grain of thought. And quite frankly, I think there are more of us that are united by certain issues than we are divided. Division makes money. Politicians use divisive arguments to get fundraisers going. And, there's what do we call it? When we've got the mainstream media who is using divisive people to get clicks, to get audience numbers high, headlines that are crazy to make people go, oh, I want to buy that paper, for those who still buy paper and magazines. So, but I think honestly, there needs to be this collective deep breath. And my gosh, folks, what do we really want? I think we all want the same things. I think we all want to wake up in the morning feeling optimistic, feeling safe, and feeling like we can go to work and be productive, contributing members of a great nation. And we have that opportunity still in front of us. So I think it needs to be unleashed.
Yes,
Much like my dog needs to be unleashed, right?
yes. Yep. No, I'm in total agreement with you there. I just, no, but because there are some days where we're just just the world is just can you just be a bit too crazy?
Yeah.
It's crazy, but if sometimes I'll just, just if I want to feel good, I'll actually turn on it's funny you mentioned Al Michaels. I'll turn on the movie A Miracle, about the miracle on ice.
Yes.
I'll turn that on, to make sure that I'm in good spirits, lift my spirits, gives me that good feeling.
Well, what I admire about that is that you are taking it into your own hands to make the determination about how you're going to approach that day. And I think that's what people forget. We sometimes get sucked into TikTok or Twitter and we see all this negativity and we go, oh my gosh, I can't take it. When really you have the total ability and freedom to turn it off, to close the app, to change your mind, and to say, why am I listening to all these voices out there that mean absolutely nothing to me? And I'm not even really sure who half of them are. Why am I allowing that to dictate my mood? Instead, I'm going to make the decision. I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to say, what am I going to do today that's going to make me happy, make me feel productive, maybe earn me a few bucks so that I can, pay my rent, whatever it is, but be happy. You've got your own mind. No one gets to control your mind. They will try, but it only works if you let them. It only works if you let them. But if you decide instead, you know what? I'm turning on Miracle because I want to watch that movie and feel good. And I choose optimism. I choose happiness. That's a smart decision on your part. And that's one that acknowledges that you, Sam, get to make the decision, not anybody else. And I hope more people will do that day after day after day.
Yes, I like, once again, I'm in total agreement with you, and just, it would really be nice, if we've been saying, if in the future, just everyone can just be in good spirits, people can just wake up in the morning and just feel good, and feel good about living here.
Yeah.
Living here in such a great nation.
Yep. Where sins of the past are in the past. We must acknowledge our progress. We must acknowledge where we can do better. But it's this self-loathing that so many people feel is not productive. It doesn't help anything or anyone. It only sets us back. So I would hope that people would turn to others who are really positive and really logical and really stoic in their approach and their mindfulness about where we can go.
Yes, absolutely. Last question here. What advice do you have for aspiring sports journalists, people who want to get, into the industry?
A couple things I would say. I don't care where you came from, how much money you have, what you look like. Now, on television, it does matter what you look like. In other words, you can't go on there without a certain, combing your hair and straightening your tie a little bit and having a respectful look. Folks, if you don't like it, then don't get into television. That's what you're signing up for. It's a visual industry and you present yourself professionally. Okay. So there's that. But other than that, I don't care what color you are, what heritage you are, work your butt off every day. The second thing I would say is whether you're doing radio, whether you're doing podcasting, whether you're doing television, listen back, look back to every piece of work you do, hear it back for yourself, replay this podcast later and say, how could I have been better? Because no matter how good it is, there is something you could do better. So self-improvement and it's got to be a constant thing. And then my old John Wooden phrase that I live by, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. If you don't prepare, and clearly you came to this interview very well prepared, you knew a lot about my background, If you don't do that, then you will fail. So don't leave yourself hanging out there. Come to the table prepared. Go into press conferences prepared. Go into interviews prepared. Know what you want to ask and have background for it. And why are you asking that? Understand what are you looking for, and be objective, for God's sakes. This isn't about you. It's not about activism. It's about telling a story, and go tell the story fairly and through objective eyes, not the story as you want it to be, but the story as it is.
Hey, that is some wonderful advice, and I'm sure that, I'm sure that if you tell that to anyone, they will definitely heed that advice. I know I am. So,
well, listen, if I had just thought about it like a lot of my colleagues did, like, oh, I'm a woman in a man's world, I never would have made it this far. So why put hurdles in your own way? Instead, I said, I'm a journalist competing against journalists. And that's all that this is. And I'm going to be the best prepared and the most well-spoken and the hardest worker among them. And that's what's going to get me to where I want to go. When I ran into other women who were timid about things or felt like they were in the minority, if you feel that way, then you are that way. But if you feel like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So think that you can.
Yes, absolutely, Michele. But Michele, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such an honor to talk to you, truly.
Well, it was my pleasure, and thank you for tolerating my dog Jersey, and I'll go see what he's barking at. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, Michele. And just one quick reminder to everyone, please go listen to Sideline Sanity. It's a great podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, of course, Michele. Well, hey, Michele, hope you take care. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much.
You as well, Sam. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.